Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Iran and the United States prepare to hold a second round of high-stakes nuclear talks in Rome. Hopes for de-escalation mounted by threats. Amid the intensified fight against the Islamist group, US plans to withdraw some 1,000 troops from Syria. In a big move, US Supreme Court orders Trump administration to temporarily halt deportations of Venezuelan migrants. An Indian student, Harsimrat Randhawa, shot dead by a stray bullet in Canada. Homicide investigation ordered. Consulate extends support to the grieving family. The United States and Iran are due to hold their second round of nuclear talks on Saturday in Rome, with hopes for de-escalation being tempered by mounting military threats and mixed messages. On the eve of a second round of talks with the Trump administration, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Iran believes reaching an agreement on its nuclear program with the United States possible as long as Washington is realistic. In the talks last week, Iran told the United States that it was ready to accept some limits on its uranium enrichment, but needed watertight guarantees that President Trump would not again ditch a nuclear pact. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump said Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Trump has warned Iran of potential military action if no deal is reached, which Iran says is peaceful, but the West says is aimed at building an atomic bomb.
We are only engaged in indirect talks with the US side. And the reason for this is clear. Because of the threats by the US administration, because of the economic pressure by the US administration, and because of the maximum pressure regime that has been imposed on us, we cannot enter into direct negotiations with them. We have seen a certain level of seriousness in the first round of talks, and if they are ready to discuss the nuclear issue without involving other matters, then we can progress further towards a constructive dialogue.
I'm for stopping Iran, very simply, from having a nuclear weapon. They can't have a nuclear weapon. I want Iran to be great and prosperous and terrific. I stopped them once they were broke and they didn't have any money for Hamas. They didn't have any money for Hezbollah. There wouldn't have been an October 7th disaster. They were broke. They had no money, and they weren't spending it to terrorist organizations because they had none.
And ahead of the talks, Iran's Araghchi met Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in Moscow. Later, in a joint press conference, Lavrov said that Russia is ready to assist in any way acceptable to both Tehran and Washington.
We are ready to help and mediate, to play any role that will be helpful from the Iranian point of view and acceptable for the United States. We proceed from the fact that the only way to get an agreement, as the minister has just said, is to agree exclusively on nuclear issues.
At least 74 people were killed and 171 injured in US airstrikes on Yemen's Ras Isa fuel terminal on Friday, marking the deadliest attack since the US began its bombing campaign against the Houthis last year. Drone footage revealed extensive damage, including burned out vehicles and destroyed infrastructure. The US military said the strike aimed to disrupt a critical fuel source for the Iran-aligned Houthi group, which has launched repeated attacks on Red Sea shipping. The terminal, located 55 kilometers north of Hodeidah, is both a fuel hub and a strategic military site. President Donald Trump ordered intensified strikes last month, escalating the US military's presence in the region. Rescue efforts are ongoing at the site. Now, the Pentagon announced on Friday that the US will reduce its troop presence in Syria to under 1,000 in the coming months. American forces have operated there for years, combating the Islamic State group, which once controlled large parts of Syria and Iraq. Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell said the troops would be consolidated at unspecified sites in a deliberate and condition-based process. U.S. Central Command will continue targeting IS fighters. U.S. President Donald Trump, critical of U.S. involvement, reiterated his stance during Syria's political upheaval. And the U.S. Supreme Court early on Saturday ordered the Trump administration to temporarily halt the deportation of Venezuelan men in immigration custody. The order came after their lawyers said they were at imminent risk of removal without the judicial review previously mandated by the justices. Earlier on Friday, the top court had denied requests to block the Trump administration's move. The dispute centers on dozens of Venezuelans held at the Blue Bonnet detention facility in Anson, Texas. Lawyers for the American Civil Liberties Union filed urgent requests on Friday in multiple courts, including the Supreme Court, urging immediate action after reporting that some of the men had already been loaded onto buses and were told they were to be deported. Elected last year on a promise to crack down on migrants, Donald Trump invoked the 1798 Alien Enemies Act in an attempt to swiftly deport accused members of Tren de Aragua, a criminal gang originating from Venezuelan prisons that his administration labels a terrorist group. Democratic U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen met with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Salvadoran man mistakenly deported and being held in a prison in El Salvador, at a hotel after initial requests to meet with him were denied. The U.S. Supreme Court has directed the administration of President Donald Trump to facilitate Abrego Garcia's return after Washington acknowledged he was deported because of an administrative error. Abrego Garcia's lawyers said,
understand this case is not just about one man. It's about protecting the constitutional rights of everybody who resides in the United States of America. Now, the Trump administration wants to flat out lie about what this case is about. They want to change the subject. They want to make it about something else. And they are flouting the orders from the Federal District Court, the Fourth Circuit Court, and the Supreme Court to facilitate his return.
Abrego Garcia's lawyers said he has never been charged with nor convicted of any crime and denied the Justice Department's accusation that he belongs to the criminal gang MS-13. But the government has given no indication it plans to seek his return and said it had no authority to release a man from a foreign prison, raising the potential for a constitutional conflict should Trump defy the highest court. U.S. President Donald Trump announced plans to reclassify tens of thousands of federal workers, potentially stripping them of job protections and making it easier to carry out mass layoffs. The move would classify career government employees working on policy matters as scheduled policy career, allowing for easier termination. Governance experts warn that this could impact hundreds of thousands of workers, expanding the pool of those vulnerable to being fired. This move is part of Trump's efforts to cut the federal workforce, which he claims is bloated and inefficient. Federal worker unions have denounced the plan, arguing it will undermine the merit-based hiring system and politicize the civil service. Moving on, U.S. President Donald Trump escalated tensions with the U.S. Federal Reserve this week by threatening to remove Fed Chair Jerome Powell if he does not cut interest rates, sparking concerns over the central bank's independence. Trump, pushing for rate cuts to support his tariff-driven economic strategy, said Powell could be ousted real fast. Powell, whose term runs through 2026, responded that Fed independence is a legal matter. Economists and analysts warn that political interference could destabilize markets and weaken the U.S. economy. Legal experts argue the president lacks authority to fire the Fed chair without cause. A Trump-backed legal challenge to a 1935 Supreme Court ruling protecting agencies' independence could further impact the Fed.
We've said that the termination of Jerome Powell cannot come fast enough. He says he won't leave it, even if you ask him to.
Oh, he'll leave. If I ask him to, he'll be out of there. But
Do you believe
I don't think he's. I don't think he.
trying to do that?
I don't think he's doing the job. He's too late. Always too late. A little slow, and I'm not happy with him. I let him know it, and if I want him out, he'll be out of there real fast, believe me.
Israeli airstrikes struck approximately 40 Hamas targets across the Gaza Strip in the past 24 hours, following Hamas's rejection of a ceasefire proposal that it said failed to meet its demand for a complete end to the conflict. Israeli forces have now seized about a third of Gaza, advancing from both north and south. Defense Minister Israel Katz reiterated that disarming Hamas and freeing hostages remain key objectives. Hamas's chief Khalil al-Hayya rejected Israel's offer, calling its conditions impossible, though he offered to exchange all 59 remaining hostages for Palestinian prisoners and a full cessation of conflict. Egyptian-mediated ceasefire efforts continue, but little progress has been made. Now, dozens of people, including students and journalists, arrested over Turkey's biggest protest in more than a decade, opened in Istanbul on Friday. Some 189 people, including journalists, students and activists, were on trial across two overflowing courtrooms in Istanbul's Kaglai Justice Palace, one of the city's main courts. Demonstrators gathered amid a heavy police presence outside an Istanbul courthouse and were arrested while demonstrating against the March 19 detention and subsequent jailing of Ekrem İmamoğlu. The suspects are facing a number of charges, notably taking part in illegal rallies and marches and failing to disperse despite police warnings. İmamoğlu was arrested on March 19 and jailed days later on corruption charges. His imprisonment has been widely viewed as politically motivated and sparked nationwide protests. Canadians are considering their choices for the country's next Prime Minister after candidates challenged their rivals in a televised debate on Thursday. The two leading candidates are Prime Minister Mark Carney and Conservative candidate Pierre Poilievre. Polls show the ruling Liberals, who have been in power for 9.5 years, ahead of the Conservatives led by Pierre Poilievre. Canada has imposed retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods in response to U.S. tariffs on Canadian autos, steel and aluminium, and goods that do not comply with the North American Free Trade Deal. Carney said Canada would not try to match the US dollar for dollar in retaliation, but said the entire global trading system is being reordered. Moving on, in a tragic incident in Congo, at least 143 people died and dozens more went missing after a boat carrying fuel caught fire and capsized. Hundreds of passengers were crowded onto a wooden boat on the Congo River in northwest DRC on Tuesday when the blaze broke out. The disaster occurred near Mbandaka, capital of Equateur province, at the confluence of the Ruki and the vast Congo River, the world's deepest. A vast Central African nation that covers 2.3 million square kilometers, the DRC suffers from a lack of practicable roads, and planes serve only a limited number of cities and towns. As a result, people often travel on lakes. The Congo River, the second longest in Africa after the Nile, and its winding tributaries, where shipwrecks are frequent and the death tolls often heavy. In yet another incident of violence against minorities in Bangladesh, a prominent Hindu community leader was allegedly abducted from his home and beaten to death in Dinajpur district, according to police and family members. The deceased, Bhabesh Chandra Roy, was the vice president of the Biral unit of the Bangladesh Puja Udjapan Parishad and was a prominent leader of the Hindu community in the area. According to his wife, Shantana Roy, Bhabesh was at home in the afternoon when he received a phone call and claimed the call was made by the perpetrators to confirm his presence at home. Roy was unconscious when he was sent back home and family members rushed him to a hospital in Dinajpur. However, he was declared dead upon arrival. Still to come on this edition of DD India Live. Indian astronauts set for a historic space mission. CBIC issues new rules to simplify the GST registration. And 50 years since the launch of Aryabhat, half a century has passed since India successfully launched its first satellite. Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will embark on a visit to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia from April 22nd to 23rd at the invitation of Crown Prince and Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman. This will be the third visit of the Prime Minister to the Kingdom after his previous visits in 2016 and 19. India and Saudi Arabia share close and friendly ties with a long history of socio-cultural and trade contacts. As strategic partners, the two countries share strong bilateral relations across various areas including political, defense, security, trade, investment, energy, technology, health, education, culture and people-to-people ties. India's relations with the kingdom have evolved into a stronger and enduring partnership in the past decade, expanding into many strategic domains with growing investment commitments, broadening of defense cooperation and intensive high-level exchanges across sectors. The visit of Prime Minister reflects the importance India attaches to its bilateral relationship with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It will provide an opportunity to further deepen and strengthen our multifaceted partnership as well as to exchange views on various regional and international issues of mutual interest. A 21-year-old Indian student, Harsimrat Randhawa, was tragically killed in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada after being struck by a stray bullet while waiting at a bus stop. The Hamilton police are investigating the incident, describing her as an innocent bystander. Randhawa was a student at Mohawk College. The shooting occurred near Upper James and South Bend Road streets in Hamilton in the evening. Investigators believe a passenger in a black car fired at a white sedan with stray bullets hitting Randhawa and a nearby residence. Police are seeking dashcam or security footage to aid in the investigation. The Consulate General of India in Toronto expressed deep sorrow over Randhawa's death in a post on X and said, and I quote, "We are deeply saddened by the tragic death of Indian student Harsimrat Randhawa in Hamilton, Ontario. As per the local police, she was an innocent victim fatally struck by a stray bullet during a shooting incident involving two vehicles. A homicide investigation is currently underway. We are in close contact with her family and are extending all necessary assistance. Our thoughts and prayers are with the bereaved family during this difficult time," unquote. India and Malaysia reaffirmed their commitment to deepening bilateral ties, particularly in the areas of law and institutional reform during a high-level meeting held recently. The meeting took place between India's Minister of State for External Affairs, Pavitra Margarita, and YB Kulasekharan Murugesan, the Deputy Minister in Prime Minister's Department of Law and Institutional Reform of Malaysia. Both sides held productive and engaging discussions focusing on avenues to collaborate and share best practices in legal and institutional frameworks. The dialogue underscored the shared values and mutual interest in strengthening democratic institutions and rule of law. India's Minister of State for External Affairs, Pavitra Margarita, engaged with the vibrant Indian community in Malaysia, especially members of the Assamese and Manipuri diaspora. The interaction highlights the close cultural and people-to-people ties between the two nations. Describing the meeting as a joyful reunion with the extended family abroad, the official praised the community's role in upholding India's rich heritage while actively contributing to Malaysia's multicultural society. Margarita is leading an Indian delegation to participate in the Malaysian Association of Tour and Travel Agents Fair on April 18th to 19th in Kuala Lumpur. The visit is part of the ASEAN-India Tourism Professionals Exchange Program 2025. India is all set to mark a historic milestone in its space journey again as an Indian astronaut, Shubhanshu Shukla, will travel to the International Space Station next month. According to an official statement by the Department of Space, the Indian Air Force captain will be a part of Axiom Space's upcoming AX-4 mission, making him the first Indian to participate in an international commercial space flight to the ISS. Moving further, the Indian Navy's INS Sunaina is currently docked at Nacala Port in Mozambique, Southeast Africa, as part of India's Sagar mission. Prior to arriving in Mozambique, the ship participated in AIKE YME25, the inaugural India-Africa Maritime Exercise held in Tanzania. This visit highlights India's dedication to strengthening maritime relations and promoting closer collaboration with African nations along the Indian Ocean. Business updates now. Amid growing concerns among businesses about arbitrary delays and procedural hurdles, the Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs, or CBIC, issued a comprehensive set of instructions to streamline the goods and services tax registration process. The revised guidelines are aimed at curbing discretionary practices by field officers, especially the tendency to seek documents not mandated under the law. This follows complaints from taxpayers about harassment and inconsistency in the registration process across jurisdictions. Sports now. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh inaugurated the MP Sports Mahakumbh event in Lucknow on Saturday. During the opening function, Defence Minister facilitated senior athletes and coaches from the Lucknow division who have represented at the Olympic and international platforms. Demonstrations of Kalaripattu, Yoga and Mallakham were also showcased before the chief guest to promote indigenous disciplines. The inaugural sporting event is expected to draw over 3,000 participants. And in Indian Premier League, table toppers Delhi Capitals will face Gujarat Titans in Ahmedabad on Saturday. Both teams look well balanced. Delhi Capitals rely on pacer Mitchell Starc, Kuldeep Yadav in spin department and KL Rahul's batting in the middle order. The Gujarat Titans have game changers in form of spinners Sai Kishore and opening batter Sai Sudarshan, who has scored an impressive 329 runs. Delhi Capitals are high on confidence after the recent super over victory against Rajasthan Royals, while Gujarat Titans will aim to dethrone Delhi Capitals from the top of the standings. And in another match, Rajasthan Royals will host Lucknow Super Giants in the Indian Premier League match in Jaipur on Saturday. The Rajasthan Royals desperately need to win as they have won 2 of their last 7 games, which put them in 8th place in the IPL rankings. Nitish Rana, Jofra Archer and Yashasvi Jaiswal are the host key players, while captain Sanju Samson is doubtful for the match. On the other hand, the Lucknow Super Giants have proven to be one of the most formidable teams this season. They have won 4 of their 7 games. The top run scorer Nicholas Pooran, Mitchell Marsh and Aiden Markram are batting well. Shardul Thakur leads the bowling pack, although spinners Digvish Rathi and Ravi Bishnoi have also contributed significantly. On April 19, 1975, India launched its first satellite Aryabhat from Russia. Built indigenously, it marked India's bold entry into the space age. It's been 50 years now. DD India's Tapos Bhattacharya reports.
April 19th, 1975. India looked to the skies and took flight. From the launch site in Russia, a satellite born of Indian minds pierced the stratosphere. Aryabhatta, India's first satellite, designed and built on Indian soil, launched by a Soviet rocket, but fueled by Indian dreams. It wasn't just metal and circuits, it was a symbol of ambitions, of resilience, of the audacity to dream boldly and fearlessly. Weighing just 360 kilograms, a 26-sided polygon barely 1.4 meters wide, yet it carried the weight of 1 billion hopes. With that single launch, India became the 11th nation and only the 2nd developing country to place a satellite in orbit. Aryabhatta didn't just orbit the Earth, it ignited a revolution, one that would blaze a trail to the moon, to Mars and beyond. It all began with a single satellite and an unshakable dream. Tapos Bhattacharya's report, DD India.
Alright, that's all we have in this edition of DD India Live, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. From all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.